In this video, I'm going to talk about ways that you can increase or decrease your results once you have a set of results from doing a search. Many times you'll find you either have too many results or too few. And so there are a couple things that you can try depending on what your situation is. Those three things are exploding, the use of subheadings, or the use of limits. And so in this video, I'm going to discuss all three. When it comes to exploding a term, what you'll find is that it is a good way to take and give yourself more options. So if you aren't getting enough articles on a topic, one of the things you might want to think about doing is exploding. When you explode a term, what you're really doing is making your search a little bit more unfocused. Because what exploding does in a database is it causes the database, or it forces the database, to not only look for your designated subject heading, like in this case nurses, but it will also search the subject heading field for any of the more specific terms that fall below it in the tree. So in other words, it would not only look for nurses, but nurse administrators, nurse clinicians, nurse practitioners. It would look for all of these to increase the number of articles you get. Now, another reason you might want to do this, other than just increasing the number of articles, is it's also a way to ensure that you are getting all of the articles on a given topic. One thing to keep in mind when it comes to exploding is in the two main databases you're going to use, PubMed and CINAHL, that they each have a little bit of a difference when it comes to this. In PubMed is going to automatically explode. You'll have to go into the mesh entry terms and go into the record and tell it not to explode, which I show you how to do in a video in the PubMed tutorial. So if you don't want it to do it, you have to tell it to stop. If you do nothing, it'll not only search for nurses, but it will search for everything, which will give you a broader search. In CINAHL, it won't do that. In order to explode in CINAHL, you must go into the CINAHL heading entry and tell it, I want to explode this term. If you don't, it will just search for the given CINAHL heading that you have chosen. Now let's say that you have too many articles. One of the things that you might want to use are the subheadings. A subheading, very simply put, is going to just provide more focus or detail to your search. Like in this case, you'll notice I have nurses, and you'll see the scope note, but then you'll also see these subheadings. What these subheadings will do is take in and give you it'll look at a certain aspect when it comes to nurses. Like you may want to look at how they're organized in the administration when it comes to nurses. Or you may want to look at nurses and standards, like what it takes to become a nurse. Or you might be interested in the supply and distribution, depending on what your interest is or what your question is. When you use subheadings, it'll always decrease the number of articles you have returned to you. The more of them you click, the more articles you'll get. If you click none of them when you're doing a search, it'll look at all of them. Your search results will return all of them. But if you start picking them, you're automatically decreasing the number of articles you get. I always stress to not use this option unless you really know what you're doing, or until you have looked at the articles that have been returned to you. Because in using them, sometimes you may eliminate an article from your search results that in fact, upon further reflection, may be useful in answering your question. Another way that you can further focus a search is the use of limits. As you can see on the left side here of the page, I have a list of a couple of the different types of limits that you'll find in databases. When it comes to the limits, one of the more important ones is probably the one for language, because many of the databases that we are using are international in scope. Many of them have articles that are not in English. And if you're unable to get one translated, or you don't speak that language, the best thing maybe to do is to go in and use the limit for the English language, which will help to give you fewer articles and also make sure that you have articles you can read. One of the other things about limits is that they're very useful when it comes to time period, like if you want to get it to the last 10 years or the last 5 years or something like that. And it's also very useful when it comes to publication types. As you know, when it comes to evidence-based practice, you're always looking for the top of the pyramid, whether that be an evidence-based guideline, systematic reviews, or meta-analyses. One way to sift through all of the articles you get to those are to use limits. But keep in mind, when you use limits, you are decreasing the number of articles you get. Now, with that said, I would like to do a quick review here and give you some other things to think about. Remember, when you're not finding enough articles, try a couple things. Explode terms. Remember, that will expand your search. You can also do some keyword searching. Remember, keyword searching will expand your search because not only will it search the subject heading field, but it will search other parts of the citation as well, therefore giving you more. Another thing to think about that might be useful is look at the related or citing articles for that particular article. You can use those to kind of string along a set of articles that could answer your question and increase the number that you have to look at and to consider. If you're finding too many articles and you really want to focus your search, there's a couple ways for you to be able to get fewer articles as well. One, use the major concept or subject designation. Make it so that the term you're looking for is the major topic of the paper. Use subheadings, which we just discussed, or use limits. Regardless, all of these are good tools either to expand or to focus your search, but how you use them and when you use them is largely based upon your comfort level with them and what your search strategy might be, because different databases will allow you to use different things in order to either expand or contract or focus your search. And that is how you can expand and contract or focus a search depending on your needs when it comes to a search.